And you probably want to have this set for separate. Oh, actually, I guess
stereo?
maybe that doesn't matter because it'll just be recording in stereo. Let's see. Okay. Is this me here?
Yep. Don't forget to change your shirt, though.
Oh, yeah. Can't do that.
Oh, let's see here. I don't want to see that. Let's see.
Oh, and I forgot to
Forgot to, 1, 2, buckle my shoe. Are we on air already?
yes.
As in, are we live?
Yes.
Oh, so like, they're hearing us? Oh yeah, watch live. Hang on, I gotta get my tea ready. Oh, they're hearing us. Stop talking.
Okay, so is there a way to monitor the stream on my phone here? Live.
Ooh.
That's showing old life stuff, not right now. All right. Oh. Okay.
Are you gonna be able to switch camera, or is it just gonna keep it on 2?
Well, I guess I'll probably just keep it on 2 for now, unless somebody stops by and wants to direct for us. It really seems like you should be able to monitor your live stream on your phone. As far as...
Of course, all your viewers just heard that slurp on my phone. On
That's
their
all right.
microphone.
Okay.
Do you have any watchers yet?
No. All right. Well, unfortunately, I don't see any way to like see
Bet you're live.
comments and stuff
Oh.
like that, you know, like on the phone.
Maybe that's why they use a... Oh, you know, it would have been nice if I brought my laptop.
Well, there's
to use
that. Now, what I could do is take the laptop over there, since I'm not going to be
Yeah.
using.
So
Well,
you're not-
the
are you
idea was
using
that
it?
I was going to use like overlays and blah blah blah.
Oh.
But if
Well,
I'm
you
not,
can switch from there then, couldn't you?
but if I'm not going to, yes, I could switch from there. But if I'm not going, it was the, do I want to do the overlays or do I want to be able to control things?
Well,
So
you would have done the overlays anyway if it's over here.
that was the thing.
Oh.
Let me take a quick peek here. And let me get that
Take my watch off.
link.
Oh my.
Okay. I think everything's rolling. Check, check, check. We have good audio levels. Hello, hello, hello. Ha-ha! Hey! Okay. And hopefully it's coming out on the stream all right. Okay.
Time to find when I pulled up YouTube earlier.
Okay. We need to start recordings on the actual cameras.
I'm going to grab a coaster.
Okay. Oh, you went black. Probably because of Sony's HDMI issue. Okay, so I'll grab the laptop then.
Did you start recording though?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
recording. See this Wi-Fi here.
Well, it's going down now.
Huh?
It's going down now.
Oh, okay. That will be an issue if I can't connect to this Wi-Fi, because then I won't be able to control the switcher. But okay, let's see. Oh, let's see what's what here. Okay. I'm on the screen.
Oh, you moved the end table, right?
Yes.
Okay. I might move mine forward
Okay.
too.
Yeah, it was like way
Yeah.
over here as far as the laptop was concerned. All right. So, okay, now I see that. Connect automatically. Come on. Oh. Okay. Okay. Now I'm connected to that Wi-Fi. Okay, I can see stuff now with the switcher. And let's refresh this, make sure everything's still on the up and up. We have a text coming in. Bambi's headed home. We're at 5:15. We're live. All right. So it looks about 17 minutes into the stream.
Wow.
All right. So for the purpose of multi-tracking, and I guess while we're at it, let's do something fun here.
A little music?
No.
Oh.
Atomic clock. That helps with syncing too. Okay, so it's 5:15-ish, and we started on time, but it was nowhere near ready to go, apparently. So, Joshua Jackson, Sean Wade, what's up? We are going to talk about, he just recently did his first wedding video, and I thought it'd be cool, first of all, doing the live stream because I hate editing. I don't actually hate editing, but I don't really enjoy editing, even though I do a lot of it. So I figured a live stream, I wouldn't have to edit anything. But the humorous thing is that I'm still going to edit it because I am playing around with 10-bit 422 log H.265 on the Canon XF605. I was going to do log on Sean's ZVE10, but it has log, but it only does it in 8-bit. Is it 420 on inside and 422 external?
External. But
So
then also you couldn't export or send HDMI with a LUT or
yeah.
anything.
On the Canon, I can do log internal and then add a LUT to the SDI out so that it looks reasonably proper at the switcher. could not figure out how to do that on the Sony, so we ended up just using the picture profile. What was that Picture Profile 3, I think, as it's done. And then my venerable AX43 camcorder in the center, which I am continually surprised by. And of the 3 cameras, that was the one we used for our reference picture. So there you go. So, have some Double J Productions embroidered polo here. Got a good deal on Queensboro. If you would like to order something at some time from them, use my referral link and I'll get some kickback. So I have a few things that wanted to talk about. And this is fresh on his mind because he just did this in the last couple of weeks. My first wedding was 15 years ago, something like that. And I still remember quite a bit about it, but I figured he would have a fresh perspective, and looking at it from the vantage point of someone who's never done one before, it'd certainly have a lot of interesting things to talk about. So first thing is, what did you think it would be like? What were your expectations going into it? What were you planning? Things of that nature.
What did I expect? Well, I expected it to be a lot of work.
Obviously, you had never done a wedding video before, so you didn't have any like real world.
And by wedding video, he's meaning shoot videography at a wedding.
And then editing it.
Yeah,
currently.
which I have not even, well, I did get the skeleton. Yeah, I've been wanting to do a wedding for a couple years now, and a couple of friends that I know asked me to do their wedding. And what I expected was, like, I knew it was going to be work, and I knew, knowing me, it was going to be a lot of preparation and a lot of just preparing as best I could with the gear and the knowledge that I knew at the time.
Okay, and what gear were you using? You have your own, the ZV-E10 is your camera.
Yes, I actually got that camera after they asked me to do the wedding, because I wanted to have my own camera even before that. But I also borrowed your 3 cameras. I figured the more angles we had, the better coverage I'd be able to get of the entire...
Canon XF605, Sony AX43, and what's not being used, a very inexpensive Sony CX405.
Which I could have done without.
Wow. It is a $100 camera, but it can do a good job in certain conditions.
In certain lighting conditions, with good light, allegedly.
Allegedly. Now, you were talking about that you got the ZV-E10 after you were proposed about the wedding. You've done multiple short films, and that's all been on cell phones thus far.
Yes. Cell phones have worked well, and I was going to use my cell phone as a 5th, or where it'd be, I guess, 6th camera at the wedding. At the time, it was everyone slated for it to be outside, and I was going to have that as a creative shot of the wedding party coming down the aisle. But things
We have
changed.
0 viewers.
That's all right.
Okay, so
We're just having conversations.
so you had planned, you had some ideas as to what you might want to do. Of course, you had met with them, the bride and groom, beforehand, figured out what their expectations for a wedding video were versus what you thought you could do.
Yeah.
Some people do different things. What did you plan for that you didn't end up doing, or what did you think you might need, got it, and then after it was all said and done, didn't even use it?
Well, I planned for a 6-camera, 6-angle shoot, 4 stationary cameras, me on my ZV-E10 on the gimbal, and then a second shooter on his camera.
And you got the gimbal for the
I also got the
wedding.
gimbal for the wedding.
Yeah.
And, I was at the dress rehearsal. I guess not a dress rehearsal, just a rehearsal. A few days prior to, and going up to that, I was just based on other things, watching a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. I also purchased a variable ND filter to use in case the sun got out, came out too, or if it was too bright. And leading up to the day, there was rain in the forecast. Therefore, I didn't think I would need the variable ND filter, but I got it anyway because I would rather have it, not open it, and not need it than, need it and not having purchased one.
Amazon return?
Yep. It's still sitting on my counter, just unopened. But I didn't end up using that. Also, I bought a couple clamps to hook onto the tripods because there was some rain in the forecast. And just to be prepared and not wanting to have, the cameras get drenched on. Bought a couple clamps from Amazon. Bought a couple umbrellas with the really big overhang to make sure the cameras would be covered. So bought those, and didn't end up using those because they moved the wedding to indoors when the rain.
At the last minute.
When the rain came, yes, 15, 20 minutes till.
And that's something that's worth considering, is because any time that you're going to do any kind of outside event, concert, wedding, people playing soccer, at any moment things could go haywire and something can change. Another thing worth noting about doing stuff outdoors, you were talking about the variable ND filter because of the varying brightness. Even on a cloudy day, it can be quite bright. I know I wear sunglasses, pretty much any time I'm outside. But that's one thing that's cool about some of the new Sony cameras is they have the variable electronic ND filter. So instead of having to buy a filter that you screw onto your lens or variable where you have to manually adjust it, you could just set it to auto, get your ISO set, or your gain set, depending on if you're a camcorder guy like me, and get your aperture, get your shutter speed, all that stuff locked out the way you want it, and then just let the variable ND take care of the brightness for you, up and down. What didn't you plan on that in hindsight you wished you had thought of? Was there anything that just caught you for a loop other than the obvious last minute going inside?
That probably would be what it was, because I had no plan on what my camera angles would be if it were to move inside.
The rehearsal was outside.
Yeah, everything was outside. Where we ended up having to do the wedding was in where the reception was located. So they ended up walking into the room, basically across the dance floor. Tables all around the perimeter of the room, and
so even the way that they had rehearsed it as far as the directions of walking and things of that nature, that was different.
A little different. I mean, they were still walking down a straight line, but
okay.
But on the sides of them, like all the guests were at round tables instead of pews or whatever.
I know you were talking about you had planned like they were going to walk a certain way
and then turn
and come down, so you were going to have some shots set up for some of that type of stuff.
That went out the window as soon as we went inside because that was going to be my cell phone. My cell phone was going to get that as they turned the corner. But once it was moved inside, it was basically, where do I have to put cameras to get coverage of just basic coverage?
And you didn't have personnel, camera operators. So
I had one second shooter.
There was a lot of stuff just locked off, just running start to finish.
So basically, I didn't prepare for that, but at that point, creative shots went out the window. It was just, where do I need to place the cameras to make sure that I get the, bride and groom what they want out of the video that I'll edit. And
given your kind of filmmaking vantage point, you were probably intending to do a lot more stuff manual. Yeah. I think you said once it went indoors, you just set everything on full auto and.
Yeah, I told my second shooter, I'm like, we're just doing auto. Just put everything auto.
Yeah. So that's funny because a lot of people poo-poo on auto, and you know, like, and I will say, like, for instance, my Canon camcorder here, the auto white balance is not that great. I did a shoot at a church with multiple cameras, and unfortunately, the Canon was by far the most expensive camera, and I would say from an auto white balance standpoint, it probably had the worst auto white balance. It, you know, as you moved it around, the white balance would change and stuff like that. So I have just learned, like the Sony white balance, I usually am pretty happy with. But the Canon, I've just learned to at least set it for daylight or indoor, if not just do a manual white balance. What would you specifically think about, maybe things that you would do differently on your next wedding shoot? And a lot of this stuff really, you know, we're talking about a wedding, but a lot of it really would work fine for any kind of live event. First of all, anytime you can be part of a rehearsal is going to be great. I know the wedding that I did so many moons ago, there was no part. I don't even know if they had a rehearsal, but if they did, I wasn't a part of it, and so I just was guessing on where to place cameras. And I know my wife, she did a wedding shoot. She was there for photography, but it was like, hey, let's just do some video, you know, there you go. And she was not part of the rehearsal that I'm aware. She got there like an hour before the wedding started or something like that. Just enough time to kind of get the cameras set up and hit record. And so the more time you have to plan, just hold the whole pre-production, meetings with people, thinking about kind of shots you want to get, finding out their expectations versus what you know, have your skill sets and your abilities are concerned, and then actually being a part of it. I know I did a Christmas video, a Christmas play, kids' Christmas play, and I don't remember if I was part of the rehearsal or not. That's been a few years ago. But any time that there's going to be rehearsal, if you can be there with the gear and actually run through it, that's great, great, great. So future things that you might want to make sure and keep, you know, on the checklist in the back of your mind, whatever. Gears are turning.
Well, yeah, because as you were saying that, I'm like, well, I did this and I did this, I did that. But what did I not do, or what else would I prepare for? What else?
Yeah, just anything that you would want to make sure and keep in mind, especially from that kind of hindsight 2020 thing, that would make the next one easier than this one was.
Honestly, in terms of making things easier, a way to like haul the gear.
True.
Because I had his 3 tripods, my own tripod, a light stand, a light, and I had 2 camera bags and umbrellas. And just all of that, it was a lot to, you know, it was a lot to keep track of. Not that I like put in like places out of sight and things like that, but going in and out to carry it, especially when I got there so early.
Now, are you talking something like a rock and roller where you can just load everything on a cart and do the whole thing, or more so like cases and stuff?
I don't want
to put things in.
I don't want to think how to do a case. I haven't looked at my options to really see but that would be a thing that would make it easier. Because I mean, looking back on things that I did do, like I knew what I knew to do. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, specifically, you know, Wayward North. His videos, Matt Johnson, Runaway Vows, those were like the 3 main ones, plus a variety of other ones. But yeah, spoke with the bride and groom, figure out what they wanted. Because as you watch a lot of wedding videos, you see a lot of shots, a lot of different personalities. And I'm like, there's like all the big luxurious weddings, and then there's, you know, just, you know, your average day weddings. And talking to them, finding out what they wanted. I found out what they wanted, knew that I could do it, and it was basically, I had free reign, and they wanted the shots, whatever shots I wanted, they were okay with me getting.
That's cool.
And then, especially like, also in terms of preparation, we had good communication with the photographer. Once she got there, we talked about, okay, where are you going to be? Where am I going to be? Of course, all that went out the window when it was moved inside, and it was just like, okay, where should we be? Where should we go? But yeah, worked as a bit of a tag team. We paid attention to each other, especially like during the bridal prep, the groom prep. We were both in the rooms at the same time, to make sure we stayed out of each other's way, but also making sure that each other got what the other wanted.
Yeah, and that's a good point on the communication standpoint with videography and photography being different people at the same time, and usually in different groups. You don't a lot of times use like a camera house's photographer. You get your own photographer, you get your own videographer, and even things like flash. You're doing the video, the photographer's taking the shot. Boom, you get a big washout for that frame or two, and you can use that to your advantage. I know I've done multiple times in videos that I've worked on where you do like a dip to color where the flash is, and then you can utilize the picture that the photographer takes, give it a nice little movement effect or something like that. But there are times where you're doing your video and all of a sudden you have that big ugly flash right there, and you either can do something with it or you can just go, well, that was no fun. But talking to them and knowing when and where they're planning on taking pictures can certainly be a useful thing.
I did think of something that I would probably do differently.
Okay.
After the ceremony and, the bridal or the wedding party, they all went out to take pictures. I did video as well in that moment. And looking back, I don't think I needed to spend all my time with them while they were taking photos. Like, I got some shots, good video that I'll include in the highlight reel and everything. But I think my time could have been better served inside with where the reception prep was happening. Now, I had my second shooter in there, so he was getting stuff. But I think overall, I would have been better getting more shots inside than the outside. Because basically, the wedding party, they're really just standing there. They're not going places because it was raining at that point. So there's not a lot of movement.
Yeah.
But that would be something that I would probably limit my time in.
And of course, talking about having other people working with you, other camera operators, whatever the case might be, letting them know the kind of shots you're looking for, or just taking the, get whatever you want and, I'll fix it in post type of thing. But if they know what you're looking for, now if you're doing like BTS type stuff, you can just be like, here's a camera, just shoot everything you can.
Yep.
Now that's a worthwhile question. If you had it to do over again, would you try to do some more BTS style footage?
No.
No. Okay.
If I would do my first wedding,
well, maybe maybe not with your first wedding,
footage,
but
there's
maybe
enough
for
on my
your
mind.
next wedding or something like that. But I know, like for instance, we were talking earlier about during the family photos type of thing. You had the photographer there taking pictures, and I had asked you if you did video of the photographer taking pictures, and you said no, which to me, I think that kind of stuff would be cool.
No.
And it all just depends on what you're going for, what the people that are ultimately paying you for are going for.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying those kind of things are things that I think are cool. Kind of like doing the live stream. That kind of real, if I had a camera sitting back over there shooting us, I'd probably use it.
I mean, it's good stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not saying I would be opposed to it, but I was at this specific wedding, first wedding, with basically single-minded. I wasn't thinking behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of, this would be cool later. I was just thinking, okay, what do I need to get them what they want, nothing more.
And that's
well, I do want to go a little.
and that's
more,
a worthwhile point
behind the
because ultimately, you know, in the concept of content is king, the actual capturing of the event would have to be the most important thing. You know, you can have all of these flowery, you know, cool cinematic whatever videos and then, you know, miss the kiss,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever the case might be. And that's an interesting thing to kind of touch on because there's a pretty big divide, especially in wedding videos, between like the traditional event videography style of doing really any event, including, I mean, even with sports and concerts, lectures, any of this type of stuff, where you're capturing the event as it happens, versus more like a highlight reel style that people are doing now. And a lot of people, especially younger people, are far more gearing towards that whole, I say, highlight reel, you know, of a wedding. When I think of a wedding video, I don't think of seeing the bride and the groom walking down the sidewalk, you know, or a path in the forest, and then seeing them, you know, getting dressed, and then skipping all the way to I do and the kiss, and then seeing people, you know, dancing on the floor in slow motion. If I was watching a video of my wedding, I would want to watch the wedding. And but you have a lot of people that are kind of growing up with looking at things like Instagram and some of these like there's a guy on YouTube that does some like crazy wedding video stuff. I was talking to my wife about it. She thought I was talking like pyrotechnics and all that type of stuff. But just taking kind of the whole idea of a wedding video and pushing it, propelling it forward to kind of the next generation. But not everybody's going to shoot like that. Not everybody's going to edit like that. And so in that kind of pre-production, preparatory, you know, meetings and all that type of thing, it's worth knowing what they're going to be looking for and really against what you can do. That would not be my skill set. Yeah. And so for me to try and shoehorn into that style of video, and I mean, I could do some of it, but there's just a lot of stuff that my brain wouldn't even think about, you know, shots and things of that nature. And so it's interesting. Now, what do you wish that you had done differently in retrospect? Or anything? Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Man, I am looking back and I'm like, not saying I did everything perfect, but I'm like, like I
pretty dang
for what I did, like for the first one with the, oh well, there was one. I probably during the first reveal for the, they did the first reveal for the dad. I'm saying his daughter in the dress for the first time prior to the ceremony. It was in a room, like I said, wasn't outside anymore. And I could have got a different angle. I stood in a place where you would get the angle of him first coming into the room, but not so much where he would go.
So you didn't
to where the bride was.
Capture the expression.
So yeah, so I kind of had to hold my gimbal out like this to their side.
Now, see, a lot of those kind of shots that you're talking about are shots that I might not even think about, and it's really worthwhile because if I was going to do another wedding, I might want to do a lot more of the like wedding party getting ready and, you know, that kind of stuff that my mind is more for here comes the bride to you may kiss the bride and they walk out.
Right.
So that's it's nice to think about kind of that all of those different things that a person could do or that a person might want. Now,
in terms of also just in terms of like learning from like the photographer, after the fact, I'm like, oh, she stood in the right spot. So it's also just like learning from you know
looking where
someone
other
else.
people
I'm
do.
like, all right, she got it.
One thing that, and really this stuff wasn't available when I did my first wedding, but one thing, and I'm thinking kind of from a gear standpoint, that would have been immensely useful. Well, first of all, if you had the ability to use PTZ cameras for everywhere, that would be really cool.
At a wedding?
Yes, at a wedding, because you can, and I'm thinking from a one-man band kind of concept, because if you're talking, you have multiple cameras and you have multiple people running the cameras and you have intercoms and you have a director that's saying, oh, hey, you go get this shot, you go get this shot, that's fine. But if you're there by yourself and you have, say, 5 cameras to monitor that are placed in different positions, you have 3 ways to go about it, basically. Well, 4 ways. 1, you set it and forget it.
I thought of something, but continue.
2, and this is something that would be really beneficial, would be having some form of monitoring system. A lot of the Canon cameras now, a lot of the Sony cameras now, you can use your phone, you can use a tablet, and you can see what those cameras are shooting at. And you can even, in some instances, control, like the focus or the zoom, or white balance or whatever the case might be. But then if you had a PTZ, then you could even reframe, and that's where that would be beneficial, because you could sit in the crowd with your tablet and go, okay, they moved, so let me take camera 2 and move it to the left, zoom it in some more. All right, camera 4, let's get that real tight right on the bride's face.
Of course, the only thing with that, you can't physically move the camera if someone is literally, because when we put everything indoors, we did it before the wedding party got there. So after, everyone was down the aisle, we had to readjust the cameras because people were now standing in front of.
Sure. And that's where it goes back to the 4th or whatever position which is what I had to do, was because I couldn't see what any of the cameras were shooting unless I was there at the camera. And so I was constantly, the entire ceremony, running just a big U around the building, looking at all the cameras, readjusting the cameras. Oh, now I need to move this up to the platform because they walked up the stairs because they were before. And not only is that distracting, but it's just a whole lot of work. Versus, again, if you can just sit there and go, yeah, that needs to be adjusted a little bit. Now, obviously, the PTZ cameras are much more expensive and, to an extent, more visible. A big PTZ camera is going to be certainly a lot more visible than my little AX43. What gear would you? Well, first of all, go ahead.
I want to go back in terms of like preparation, my goal was I had borrowed a couple walkie-talkies so me and my second shooter could communicate with each other in case, specifically during the ceremony. But that would be a piece of gear that I think one of your questions was something along the lines, but the walkie-talkies were not very useful. Basically, we could hear that each other was trying to say something, but we couldn't understand what they were saying. And so it helped us just in terms of, okay, I'll check my phone now because he's probably going to text me. But in terms of actually live communication, and that was just nothing that I did prepare for, but the walkie-talkies just kind of weren't up to par. Didn't exactly.
And that segues into what I was looking at next, is what kind of gear would you want to have on your next shoot, or if you were doing it for the first time, some kind of intercom system?
If you have a second shooter, you will want, obviously if you're a solo shooter, you're not going to talk to yourself. Well, you might.
But you say walkie-talkies, but you probably don't want walkie-talkies.
Well, some sort of intercom. Well, they do make some good walkie-talkies. some radios. But yeah, and again, if you're doing it by yourself, you won't need it.
Yeah.
And it all depends on, what's expected of you. And basically, also, like, I wanted to also deliver this type of video. Like, I didn't want to do a single, camera, or, well, I had certain locked off, but with me purposely wanting to stay in the center aisle, I needed someone else to check another camera. So that's where the second shooter came in. And plus, while I was out with the photography session, he was inside getting some reception stuff.
Yeah.
And so that just added to, because again, talked to the bride and groom prior to, and I said, well, I thought about this. Are you okay if I have a second shooter? So while I'm with you guys, he can do this. Bride was like, yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
And
So,
and one thing that I had mentioned to you when you were, preparing was more cameras are always going to be better than less cameras. Now, I will say that if you have someone running said cameras, then you could certainly do with less. But in the instance of having things locked off and just kind of set and forget, hit record, let it run for the whole ceremony, if you had 50 cameras, it would be a pain in the butt to edit, but you would capture so many good things. Even that kind of fly on the wall style where you just have a camera just recording in the room, you can capture so much. And so that's a worthwhile question. Do you think, and would you rather have, say, 10 unmanned locked off cameras or 3 manned cameras with good communication between them?
are the 3 main cameras only the cameras, or do we also have some lockdown?
No, I'm saying, would you rather have less manned cameras or more locked off cameras, unmanned cameras?
I would rather have less manned.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because, well, you have, when they're locked off, especially if you have, in your example, 10, that's 10 different cameras that you have to check on. That's 10 different
Sure.
cameras. And if you have 3 people, like, obviously, theoretically, you will hire someone who you believe will do a good job. And so they have some sort of know-how, some sort of ability. But even beyond that, just going around to check another tripod, another camera that's on a tripod, I think because...
Yeah, you said hire. Probably not hiring many people on your first shoot.
Well, I hired one because I'm like, I want a second shooter for this. But also, again, it could be the difference between your type of shooting and my type of shooting.
Sure.
Where I was thinking more than just the ceremony.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking beyond the ceremony. I was thinking, if I'm over here doing this, I can't also be over here doing that.
Yeah.
So that's where another person was helpful. And, if I had a third person, but I didn't need a third person for that one. But, I would prefer to have less manned cameras than
Now,
more unmanned.
another thing to think about, and this isn't something that you did, but if you were going to do some form of streaming or some form of live production version of it, like you did all of your stuff, you had cameras moving around, you're handheld, you're running, your other guy, he's handheld, he's running, you had a couple things that were locked off on tripods, but if you were doing any kind of live production, now you're talking about cabling, unless you do wireless transmission, and so you might not be able to move those cameras around. Would that change anything?
Well, I guess I did do that at the church, didn't I?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it is worth qualifying that this isn't his first wedding because he does directing at our church and he's done weddings at the church. But that's a totally different situation than going out on your own and doing your own wedding shoot with your equipment, borrowed gear, person, all that type of stuff.
I don't think I would want to do a streamed wedding.
Okay.
Now, if you want to do it and have me help you, that's fine. I would do that, but I don't want to be the person Like, first of all, I don't have the gear for that.
Yeah.
And I don't have any desire to
I
get
hear
the
there's
gear
someone
for
that can rent your gear like that to you.
Well, gee, who?
DoubleJPro.com.
Yeah, I mean, that's getting, again, that's making sure you have actually good, intercom system. And that's, I tell them, hey, get a phone, link to Facebook Live.
Hey,
Do it.
yeah,
Then I'll do my own video
or
for
a
something
tablet
different, but
like that.
I have no desire
There's
to
something
live
to be said
stream
for it.
a wedding.
Now, I was talking about the like monitoring type gear. You said some form of intercom communication system. Is there any other gear that you would recommend or that you would like to have? Now, obviously, you could start out with just a single camera and maybe a cell phone, on a tripod, just as like a wide shot or something like that. You did it with a mirrorless camera and a couple handheld camcorders, small camcorders, and then a larger professional camcorder. What if you were doing a wedding by yourself? Oh, and then your other guy, he had a mirrorless as well. If you were doing it by yourself, would you recommend like just doing a one camera locked off, one camera handheld, one camera locked off, one camera handheld, as far as that kind of thing is concerned? I'm always a fan of the KISS theory, keep it simple, stupid. And the more complex you get, certainly for a first time, then that's just that much more planning, that much more that could go wrong. Oh, I forgot to charge the battery. Oh, I forgot to reformat the card. Oh, I forgot whatever the case might be. Someone doing it for the first time, and then is there anything else that you would rather do differently the next time gear-wise? Like we had talked about earlier, that you like the form factor and kind of the style of working with a mirrorless camera more than with a camcorder. I like camcorders more than, the mirrorless camera side. Would you do something different there? Like, would you buy, if you did another wedding, do you think you'd buy another camera for it?
So, did you combine? It wasn't your first question.
Just kind of going back to it, what
like
gear
how many cameras
would you recommend?
Or
or how many cameras would you like to do?
If I was doing it by myself.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would say I would still probably do 3 minimum. Like having how I went into it with 6 cameras, I didn't think that was too much for me, only because it just didn't seem like. I mean, it was 6 cameras, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like, oh man, how am I going to keep track of all these? They all had a purpose, so it wasn't like I was trying to find purpose for them. It was like, hey, I want this one on the bride, this one on the groom, this one wide, I'll be in the center, this one roaming, that kind of thing. But I think you want to always have at least, I think 3 is good. You have 1 for a wide shot, FYI, a safety shot. If for whatever reason, like if you miss something or
always
whatever.
One long recording.
And then, I liked, based on all the videos that I've watched, I liked the shot of, someone being in the aisle. You can get the bride, groom, entire wedding party coming down the aisle. Well, there's a central aisle. Obviously, if there's no central aisle, then you can't do that. And then, a third one, either on the bride or the groom. But yeah, 4 would be preferred, but I think you can get it. I mean, you can get by with 2. You can get by with 1, really.
Sure.
Just back and forth and just make sure you don't miss anything.
Yeah, I think if I was going to recommend a system, and when my wife was doing that that one a few months ago, if you have your kind of classic officiant, bride, groom, crowd, I would have one wide shot, as centered as I could. And really, it'd be nice to have right next to it a tight shot of just this right here. And then a camera on either side, either here or here, one tight on the bride, one tight on the groom, and then preferably one or more of those two cameras would be manned so that they can catch people coming down the aisles and stuff like that, or have one or two just locked off shots going backwards. I'm a fan of having as many cameras as I can. I don't think there's any such thing as too many cameras in that kind of locked off environment.
Yeah. I thought of something else.
Go for it.
Backtracking to what I would do differently. My second shooter, I would have my second shooter get there earlier, not because of the nature of things. He didn't get there until 45 minutes before the ceremony, before the supposed start time of the ceremony. Which
and you were there.
I got there at
3, 4, 5 hours.
I got there at 9. The ceremony was at 2. But yeah,
6 hours.
I wanted to get establishing shots. I just didn't want to be rushed. But by the time he got there, certain things were already behind. We didn't do the first look with the dad yet. I didn't mic anyone yet. And now I talked to him twice with what my plan. I talked to him once, after the wedding rehearsal. About what my plan was. Then I talked to him again the day before, just let him know, okay, I may have changed, I'm going to change this a little bit. So he did know what he was going to do, but when he got there, it would have been good to have more time. So I would recommend, it would be nice to have the second shooter there when I got there, or at the very least, a couple hours before the ceremony starts.
1 hour is not enough time to set up and establish.
And again, I did the setup of that, but there was just other things. Plus, everything was behind. But I mean, we got it done. The communication was there, but it was still just okay. And it was a lot. I just said, okay, you basically just have to hand it off to him, because then I did mic the groom, I mic'd the officiant, I mic'd the father of the bride, and. Yeah. Now, one thing that I might look into doing if I do another wedding is getting a white lav mic to mic the bride.
Yes.
Although miking the officiant picked up the bride pretty well, which is what I was
thought you said
expecting.
that the groom's mic did a better job than the officiant's.
No, the groom was too
That was
far.
the opposite.
Yeah, the officiant came better on the officiant's mic.
Okay.
Which was great, because that was not in my plan to buy anything.
Yeah.
For a white lav mic.
In my working, when it comes to miking any of the bridal party, the bride is always going to be the quietest. Like, if I was going to either have the option of miking the bride or the groom, I would mic the bride every single time, because the groom is usually always loud enough.
Now, I did preface that with I did tell her my plan, and she was like, I'll talk loud. Yeah. So she could have had that in her mind when.
I do! But if you only have one microphone, then I might go with the officiant, because they're probably going to be somewhat equidistant between the two of them. Now, with those microphones,
yes, let's talk
microphones. You have 4 of those DJI mics.
Yes.
And you used all of them?
I used all of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you didn't have to use all of them, but that is worthwhile. You did use one of them on a handheld microphone.
Yes.
That is something I hadn't thought about before. So
again, cool. Based on, I didn't have to use all of them if, I could have, jumped from back and forth, but I figured mic someone and keep it on them until I take it off of them.
Yeah.
But yes, again, going back to meeting with them, knowing what how everything was going to go, there were going to be several people talking on a microphone, on one specific microphone. There's going to be someone doing the prayer. The groom was going to announce everyone at the reception. Best man, matron of honor if she's married, right? Or is it maid of honor is single, right? Matron is married?
I have absolutely no idea.
I think so. Well, her, father of the bride. So I'm like, okay, I don't have enough to mic all those people. What can I do? So basically, I looked on Amazon and found a little sleeve that the DJI mic could sit in,
cool.
and they go around the microphone. So everywhere the handheld mic went, a DJI mic was right on it.
Because they had their own house sound system,
Yes.
and they were going to use that microphone
Yes.
there. Now, I
can
will
talk
say,
to the sound guy.
if you ever have the ability to tap into their sound system and get a direct recording from the soundboard, rock
That
on.
was definitely everything on the videos that I watched, but I'm like, I'm not spending the money for something to record onto. And so I was like, well, that's
Yeah, and
good.
sometimes you can do your wide shot camera where the soundboard is and just do a cable right there into the camera. But I know when I did a Christmas play shoot, I took my laptop and USB'd it to the soundboard and just recorded the track straight off the soundboard. And I was glad I did it, because if I wouldn't have, I would have only had the microphones on the cameras, because they did not do a recording of the service, of the play. And I didn't have a CD, I didn't have a thumb drive, nothing. And so because of that, I had multi-track audio, and I basically reproduced the audio for the entire play, which I was very thankful that I had the ability to do that.
Yeah.
But I know I'm working on a studio setup, and they are doing 2 of the Rode mics, the wireless Rode mics, and they wanted to be able to record 3 people, to mic 3 people. I'm like, well, you can't do that
2 microphones?
with the equipment that you have, but what you can do is, you as the host of the broadcast, you can have one lav mic on you, and then you could take, and you did this with your DJI mic for the changed live stream, the watch party for the finale, is you can get an like a handheld attachment for it that you can then give to the second and third and fourth person, so that they can have a mic on them. So that's something to always consider, because a lot of times with these new wireless systems, you can get a little 2-pack, and you could have one on you or whatever your main VIP talent is, and then just have the other one just kind of hand around. You were planning on doing manual everything, and kind of from your film background. And then when you went indoors, you just set everything to auto.
Caution to the wind.
Auto white balance, auto gain, auto, audio, and all that type of stuff. Now, I will say that I have worked with Canon and Sony's autofocus at different times. I personally like Sony's autofocus better than Canon's. In this kind of instance, like we're using autofocus right now, and it should be fine, because that camera should see my eyeball, that camera should see his eyeball, that camera should at least see both of our faces. But I have found that the Sony has a tendency to stay locked on to and track that subject better than the Canon does. You've had a chance to review, a fair amount of the footage, and I think you said that overall you didn't have any issues with the autofocus. You did. I think you said that during the reception, you could see it jumping around.
Sony was better. Canon had issues with, during the reception, it just kept losing. Because I had walked over to it to just take a peek at it, make sure no one bumped it or anything. But yeah, the focus was forward. It was closer than it should have been, because people had walked in front of it and whatnot. And so at a pivotal point where I knew that I needed the focus to stay where it was during the speeches. I used the Canon to get a tight shot of the bride and groom, and I wanted to make sure that no matter what, it would still be on focus on them. So I did do that manually because I didn't want to chance them not being in focus.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed. And these newer, like the Canon has the dual pixel autofocus, the Sony has their hybrid autofocus, and you can set to do like a face only, or I think on the Sony side it's like sensitivity 0 or 1, where it is locked onto something and then nothing should change that. So like in the instance of either one of them for that matter, if it's locked onto my face and somebody walks in front of me, that person should be blurry instead of the focus jumping to them. Now, if someone were to walk with their face in front, then that might notice the face unless you specifically tapped on that person and tracked that person. But what I found more often than not was that the Canon's autofocus, even though it's set to face only, which should be locked on that tracking person, would jump. Now, on the Sony cameras, they have that product feature where you hold something out and it automatically focuses on that. But you'd have that turned off, I'm sure, in that type of instance. But overall, autofocus was decent.
Yeah.
But you agree that the Sony probably better.
Yes.
Communication, pre-production, differences between wedding styles. Is there anything else that you think would be worth mentioning that we haven't talked about? We are sitting at almost an hour.
Okay.
So I would say
An hour
we're
from
sitting,
when we started?
we're over an hour of when the stream started,
from when we
almost
actually
an
sat down.
hour of
Okay.
when we actually started
Gotcha.
talking about stuff.
I just think like the more preparation you can do, the more you see how other people have done weddings, see how you would want to do a wedding, and work with the gear that you have. I mean, or that's before you. Now, I did think about renting something. I thought about renting a light because it's,
you
it's
ended up buying a
known
light.
for the reception area not having very good lighting.
Yes.
So I'm like, I want to get a light, or I should get a light for especially like during the speeches, and so I wanted to go on sale, but it didn't go on sale. So I bought it, but it wasn't bad. I mean, I had the money.
Always check the used market.
And I did, but it was bought it for $200 new, and I ended up actually only using it once. Once for the groom prep, because that room, well, both rooms with the bride and groom, well, you wouldn't mention this, was showing, what are those called? The lines in the video, I'm just drawing.
Oh, banding.
Banding, yeah.
Or flicker.
I'm like, oh, geez, what is, so I'm like.
Now, that was with their house lights, not with your light.
Correct, that was the house light. So in the groom's room, I turned off the lights and used mine to make it look like it was coming in from a window that was in the door.
Motivated lighting.
The bride's room wasn't, there was some banding, but it wasn't as much, so I just opted to still use theirs. And actually, I didn't end up using my light in the reception at all. So, I mean, it was actually not bad. So I didn't need it. Plus, thankfully, because this would have been a whole other thing to try to figure out in there. But yeah.
So overall, it was fun. You'd do it again?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wade Media for all of your wedding needs.
I will vet my couples, though. I will say I would not want to do a wedding solo, though. But then again, I guess it also depends on if someone just wants a one camera and they just want it like documented and don't want like a video edited after, then that would be something different, obviously.
Sure.
But if they want, they want that video, they want, different things, they want all the prep, they want, the ceremony, they want the speeches. I don't, like, there were plenty of videos showing how to do it as a solo shooter. But I'm like, I have no desire to do that. Like,
A lot of preparatory work.
I would rather always have at least one other person.
It's kind of like shooting an interview with one camera. ask the same question 3 or 4 different times and getting things from different angles. It's hard. If you're in and it's kind of the difference between like studio shooting and live shooting. That's one thing that I like about live event videography is because there is a raw nature to it. There is an unscripted nature to it. You don't have the ability to go, okay, I didn't quite like that. Let's do that line over again. And so and some people even enjoy watching that type of thing because they know whatever happens is what happens. I know even with like church services and stuff like that, there are some people that would rather watch the unedited version than the edited version because they feel like they're missing something. And they probably are missing something. But it's just kind of interesting. Now, something that we had talked about earlier before the stream was, talking about the difference between kind of the modern wedding video style versus traditional wedding style, or even just events in general. And I had mentioned that, if what the most important part of the whole thing, the whole process is, and you said that the bride, if only had one option, the highlight reel would be the most important one, not the actual wedding itself, and which is backwards from my thinking. But it just goes back to talking to the client and seeing what their expectations are, because I would not think that. I would not think missing, the majority of the actual content of the ceremony would be desirable.
They're just walking down the aisle most of it.
People are talking. Things of that nature.
People are talking.
But yeah, so we're going to wrap this up. I would want to mention a couple things, just sort of background information on this. We'd mentioned the cameras that we're using, things of that nature. But they are vastly different cameras and from different brands. We have 2 Sonys, we have Canon. So the color sciences are going to be different. Try to do a pretty decent job of matching them up. We did use a gray card gray card one side, white card on the other side for exposure, balance, doing manual white balance. But even with that, now your light is set for 3200 Kelvin.
Yes. And
the Canon here, manual white balanced at 2700. And I can't see the screen because we're recording. I think that was 3100. And then this other one, it was a one shot. It doesn't say what the actual Kelvin scale is. And then you have picture profiles going into play and things of that nature, which are going to make things look different. We went through multiple picture profiles on the Sony ZV-E10, and then, of course, we're doing log on the Canon, but we went through multiple LUT profiles on the output of it just to try to get everything to kind of look similar. But an interesting thing is this shirt right here, one of the reasons why I got it specifically is because, and this is a tip that I had seen from Gerald Undone, because he always wears this gray bracelet. And he said any shot that he's in, he automatically has something to a gray card. And so instead of getting a black shirt, because you think guy in the background, you want all black. But instead of doing that, I thought, hey, why not do a gray shirt so that I always have a gray card? If I'm in the frame, you can look at exposure, you can look at white balance, things of that nature. So I was like, hey, cool. And it seems to be working out pretty well. Now, granted, I did it on the card. I didn't use it, yes. But it'll be interesting to see the gray card versus the gray shirt. So, all right. Weddings. Do them.
Do them.
Make money doing it too.
Have fun.
So, now here's a worthwhile question.
Yes. Would I videography my own wedding? No.
No, pricing. A lot of people want to get into videography, filmmaking, all that type of stuff, to make money. Mm-hmm. And some people can make a lot of money, and a lot of people, like we do this kind of thing more for hobby than anything. We have our own full-time jobs in the video industry per se. And so what would you think would be a fair price for a first time? Now, first of all, of course, there's nothing wrong with doing a freebie.
Yeah.
Especially, if it's your first time, do you want to have someone pay for what you may or may not give them? No. But you certainly don't want to charge a lot for basically practicing on them. I mean, let's be real. That's what you're doing. You're practicing. So what would you think would be a fair first couple weddings? Now, also, you have to consider you're spending money on gear. Maybe you're buying it.
Yeah, if you
maybe
have
you're
to.
renting it.
Yeah.
Versus just shooting on a couple cell phones.
Yeah.
So I would personally think that like $500 would not be outside of the realm of acceptability. I don't think $1,000 for a first time, that seems pretty steep unless you have a lot of other experience under the belt that will apply to it.
Like if Steven Spielberg was,
If,
I'm gonna get into weddings.
$1,000, sure.
But actually, funny enough, there is someone who does like professional weddings on her iPhone. She has an Instagram. Heard about her. But anyway.
Oh yeah.
But first time now that was one thing that I was, like I said, I've been wanting to do weddings or do a wedding for a couple years now. I've been interested in it, but I'm like, who would trust me to do like
It's a big deal.
Big event for someone who has not done a wedding before? But I suppose perhaps the bride and groom has seen my short films. Maybe they liked what they saw, and had faith that I could do a good job at their wedding. But anyway, they asked me. But yeah, when they asked for a price, I obviously knew that I had not done one before, so I wasn't gonna charge anything astronomical. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, this is gonna be some work,
Sure.
and I'll need to get some stuff. But yeah, like $500. I'm obviously not saying what I asked for. But I don't see $500 being.
Yeah, that would seem fair to me.
Well, it also depends on what you're doing. If you want this type of wedding that they wanted, like an edit and all this other stuff and all the highlights, if you're there all day,
Sure.
Then yes. Like if you're just come in and document my wedding for me, I don't think $500 is. If you're just going to stand there with the camera.
You think that'd be steep?
Yes. If you're not really doing anything.
Now, granted, you haven't edited yet, so you have no idea necessarily how much time you're going to spend on that side of it.
I know for a fact that I would my next wedding. I would ask for more, but I know that.
Right now, how many hours do you think into this job are you?
In terms of with research.
Yeah, no, as far as you went to the rehearsal. You were there hours before the event. Like you basically said that you were there all day on the day of.
What I ended up doing for how much I asked for, I really only calculated. I did an hourly based on the amount of hours that I would be there. So I didn't really take into account I knew I was going to do it, but I didn't want that to be a factor of that, only because I figured it would kind of offset the fact that I'd never done a wedding before.
Yeah.
So the editing portion of it, how many hours, that wasn't part of that, but it would be for future.
So let's say you were there a total of 10 hours, and I don't know if that's accurate.
From 9 to almost 9, so almost 12 hours.
So 12 hours, and then you were there for the rehearsal, a couple hours there. Mm-hmm. So let's say 15 hours. And then going through the footage, importing, blah, blah, blah. You got, a good couple hours there. And then would you say that you could spend 40 hours working on that?
Yeah, because
So you're talking a 60-hour job.
Yeah.
Start to finish. And so $600 would only be $10.
Oh yeah, that's why after everything's said and done, my next wedding I would definitely, and of course because I know them, they're friends, purposely
Sure.
didn't.
But that just kind of qualifies that
Yeah.
$500 is a reasonable,
Yeah.
a reasonable amount.
But also one thing to consider though, I didn't consider though the gas to get down there. I
Sure.
didn't consider at that time. I didn't know if I would have a second shooter, but I didn't consider that. I just paid him out of what they gave me.
Yeah.
I didn't consider snacks that I bought, which that's
Man.
important if you're there. Now they did feed me. It's not like I was actually
And you've
I was
purchased
invited to the wedding. But
hundreds of dollars of gear
yes.
for this. Now that's not the only time you'll use it. You'll get
Correct.
lots of life out of it. But those are all things that are worth considering.
Yeah. So it's kind of like based on what will you need to do what they want you to do. But yeah, like
So if
I'm
you want
gonna
Sean
use
to
this,
do your next wedding, it'll be $2,700.
2,700.
All right. Goodbye.
See ya. Maybe. Where do we end at?